joy and success. Every day is a chance for happiness. Yes, we can live a beautiful, crazy plan. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a celebration.
Hello and welcome to the Great Song Adventure. My name is Paul Zolo and I'm here with
Louise Goffin.
Hi, Louise.
Hi, Paul. It's so fun to be here. This is our first episode.
Yeah, and I'm so glad we're starting the adventure at long last. We've been talking about this for a while. Here it is.
Here we are.
And I'm really glad for our very first episode of the Great Song Adventure, one of the big adventures. We go talk to great songwriters about how they've written great songs. And we started with a person we both have real reverence for, Dyke Parks.
It just felt like a day in the life of Hollywood. We had this big picture window the whole time we were talking, and there were things going on like Hitchcock's Rear Window, only nobody was being killed. But we did see a cat go up in the tree and
Young lovers kissing. There was courting going on. It was very romantic.
and the doorbell going ding dong, and a package came.
And Van Dyke sat down at the grand piano at one point and played beautifully, as always.
That was a real treat.
We decided we should start our show with one of the great songwriters. We start with one of the greatest, so it's a good place to start. And also, such a great person to talk to because he's just so brilliant. You could ask him pretty much anything, questions other people don't even want to think about, and he could answer them and beautifully.
The amazing thing about Van Dyke is he's way more than a songwriter. In fact, when we talked to him, he kept saying that his favorite thing to do is arrange and interpret a piece of music. And our listeners will get to hear that in a minute because we're going to share this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's famous for being a great songwriter, writing lyrics for Brian Wilson that the Beach Boys did, and his own brilliant albums like Jump and Tokyo Rose. But yeah, he's an amazing arranger, and we talked to him about it. I wasn't sure if he'd really be able to explain it, but he could. He really talked about how he actually does it, so it's really exciting that we got it.
It was really fascinating. I can remember a lot of phone calls where I would just be kicking myself for not having a recorder going or taking notes because he would say such brilliant things about how many instruments he liked to use, how much he loved to use the harp. And I would just say, please remember as much of this as possible.
Yeah, really, wisely we recorded this one, which was good.
That was a good move.
Yeah. And, he worked with you on your song Chinatown, which is a duet with Rufus Wainwright. And you told me that Van Dyke Parks had done the orchestral arrangement, which is kind of a songwriter's dream to have him do the arrangement because his arrangements are just so distinctive and amazing. And he gave you the full Van Dyke Parks treatment. I mean, it's just glorious what he did.
It was really a pleasant surprise because I gave him really a very limited recording. It was a mic set up in a room. I wrote the song with Billy Harvey, and we just set up a mic, and he played guitar, and I played piano when we were singing on the same mic, and I think there's even a couple of mistakes on the recording, and that's all he had to work with, and he just sent me the whole arrangement and without any lyrics or singing on it, and I really fell out of my chair when I heard it. It was more than I would have ever expected. It was just the greatest thing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's genius, and it goes perfectly with that song. It's a great song, and I'm happy we're going to hear that later in the show. But first, we're going to get to hear our talk with Van Dyke Parks.
Yeah, here it is, our conversation at Van Dyke's house. Here we go.
Well, hello, we're here in the home of Van Dyke Parks, and I'm very, very excited to get to be with one of my songwriting heroes, and someone I've been honored to get to interview several times. Over the past, I realized 30 years. The first time I interviewed Van Dyke was in 1988. It's 30 years ago.
Yep.
And here we are still. But this is the first time I ever came with Louise Goffin, so I thought it's got to be better.
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's good to see you.
Well, it's always nice to be part of your casting, whether it's pod or otherwise. So I'm very delighted to be with you.
This is Pod. This is for Modern Times.
And this is so fun. I mean, the last time I saw you, we were at Soundcheck at the Alex Theater, and we left to go grab some food in this little restaurant outside
Brazilian,
in Glendale.
right? A Brazilian restaurant?
Yeah, it was a Brazilian.
Louise, we're always going outside the box. What does that say about us?
I don't know. You
I
said,
like it
hey,
here.
I know this place around the corner.
And that was for the band tribute, right?
That
They
was
were
the
both-
band tribute. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
that-
Wild Honey.
yes,
That was a great night. Garth Hudson was there.
Yes, I remember that, even if he doesn't.
yeah.
I was there, so he remembers.
Well, I've gotten to interview you, but Louise has gotten to work with you. I heard Chinatown recently that you did that remarkable arrangement.
Well, it was a remarkable song, and I told Louise it doesn't need anything. And then she suggested Rufus Wainwright, what might be nice, and I know him, so we got Rufus Wainwright to swing into this thing. And it's just, of course, he got it right away because he's an escape artist as Louise is.
He was great. He came on time and he just nailed it. It was fantastic.
And I agree, it's a great song. It could stand on its own. But with that arrangement, it just sounds phenomenal.
No, it
I was
wonderful.
I was thinking Van Dyke didn't hold back. He brought your A game to that arrangement.
Oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah, it's I love that old Hollywood sound and the ramp. I'm curious, how did you go through all these changes where you started off in Hollywood as you were an actor, and you were telling me a story at the Village about Lillian Gish.
Yep.
And I mean, it seems like you've had so many chapters and lives and roles musically.
Well, yes, I think that I end up usually doing the job nobody else wants to do, or something like that. I think that's what arranging is. It's an odious job. I mean, it is because it's such a challenge. It involves so much trust. And it also, most people want to go into the game pretending that they know something, like they want to pretend that they know how it's going to go. I mean, that is the rule. I mean, it's called being professional. But I've never been professional. I always go in with a complete state of wonderment. And like Moses, the stammerer, always doubting that I might get through it. And it just is a process of inquiry, and the trust is absolutely mutual. So that when somebody gives you a song to arrange, even if there's nothing broke about it or that it doesn't really need anything, it might want for something, and so that's to be found out, and I never know what that is. And it's always in a case of a song that really is kind of a rapture or has an attitude or an atmosphere, that can be a wonderful thing, and it was with Chinatown that I...
Thank you. You know what was so funny is you said, well, send me some songs, and I sent you all these demos.
Yeah.
And then that song was just a little scratch recording that wasn't recorded, it was just a mic in a room.
Yeah, but I mean, but you can tell when there's mastery or certainty in a sketch. You can tell it's sure-footed and an image, and I loved all that. I love the simplicity, the clarity of an image. And we share that same thing. I mean, for example, I once did a movie called The Two Jakes. It was the successor to Chinatown. So all this time I've been telling people, no, I never got to do Chinatown. Well, I did now with Louise Goff.
And speaking
love
of the
that
two
movie,
Jakes,
yeah.
Because of that, you knew Elsa Blankstead, who I got to meet because of you, and who's going to be 98 this year, one of my best friends. Another great person I met because of you.
Titan of our time. I mean, really, because she's part of what connects us all, I think, in this podcastery. What is this called?
I think that should be the word if it isn't.
Podcastal. And that is, that she's part of this, the fabric of this town, the Chinatown, for example. The very warp and woof of this town, the images that come here. And the idea is, in song at least, we reverence these places that are being homogenized or pasteurized. Chinatown is such a place. It's very dynamic and very troubled. I know someone down there who owns a store, Mason Fong, the Hong Kong Fong, as a matter of fact. And he is that family, and his father and his grandfather lived in that same piece of real estate. And he's there today, an artist who has a shop down in Chinatown. So everything connected.
When I listen to that arrangement and that song, I'm always wondering how great songwriters write great songs. But when I heard that arrangement, I was just thinking, how do you do that? Because there's so many moving pieces, And I was really curious how you got to that place.
Well, I did it because Louise had an unfettered whimsy and really just decided to trust me. I mean, that really takes some courage, to have a date like that. It's very rare. It's what some people call, you see, the thing is, arranging is work, and that frightens me. Work frightens me. So musicians have jokes. Do you want it good or do you want it Monday? Well, we want both, They could say the end of next November or whatever. It would still seem like a deadline to me. You finally have to make a decision about things.
But to actually get to that arrangement, is it all on the piano that you discovered? And where does it
How do I derive my procedure? It's something that I learned, and the idea being, if our motive is to give away freely what we have paid dearly to learn, what I do, since I was a pianist as a child, what I do is I do a 2-piano pass at everything. Well, that is much more than 2 piano, because I will lose 8 bars overnight. I'll wake up the next morning and decide to get 16 bars, lose that. And so it's very long, devoted I spend on average a week per song. And in doing so, I concentrate on the first thing I do is write down what's there. That's the first thing, absolutely, exactly. If there's a bass there, if there's a note that's almost this or almost that, put it down. Because that needs to be decided, whether it's going to be pitch corrected or whether you're going to make hay out of that great note. We'll sing in the sunshine, we'll laugh every day, hey, hey. Wait a minute. These boots are going to walk all over you. I don't think, Nancy, we're going to go down to the bottom note. Next time we're going to hit it on the next refrain. You have to make decisions when you're arranging, and they should be based on what's already there before you even showed up, so that when you leave, you don't leave a mess being noticed too much, but just part of the intention of the singer. So that's the first thing, is write down everything, every click, note, every word, everything is there. What's there? And that's called takedown. And takedown to me is the ultimate musical dweeb activity. That is for the real dweeb, the nerd, is to just observe what's there. Once you do that, that simplifies your job. You want to reinforce some of that, and then you want to do other things to complement that, maybe answer that. And so the way once that's done, and that can take me a day of great care, a constant work to write down exactly what's there, whether it's a banjo or a swinette or a whoopee cushion, whatever it is, that takes care. And you'd be surprised how much work I put into that, and how much pride I take in just seeing what's there. I think my ear is my best instrument. Then I do things like, I might want to use a big word, enunciate. I might want to enunciate something. That chord was a little louder. Let's make sure we get some reinforcement on that. I know that's coming. And to get there, I usually use like my grandfather's Steinway. It's been in our house since March 11th, 1911. And sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll play the song with it. And I do the left hand information, the alto down. I do all that work to find out what's in there. And I migrate to a sequencing event. I use Digital Performer, which is antediluvian, but it connects to the world of slow tools and MIDI, standard MIDI. So I'm communicating with other people who use other Logic or Sibelius, and I've used other things. And I did one record with Silverchair with just Sibelius in a hotel room with a little keyboard that went up and down. Very interesting, the pressures of the road. So, yeah, I used Digital Performer, and what I'm doing, basically, in arranging, is thinking about two events. I'm thinking about what's high, I'm thinking about what's low. So I've bifurcated my approach to a song. I'm paying attention. do I want any decorations here? Does she want anything to address her thoughts or something up here? To give maybe like something piquant or that hits well. And I do that, usually we used to see a lot with harp and woodwinds at the same time to give punctuation to thoughts or afterthoughts.
Yeah, you use harp a lot. That's one of your
I
signature
use harp
sounds.
because it's ours. Harp is ours, no matter who we are. Whether it gets out the Druid marrow or brings Middle Europe out, or the Greek modes or whatever. It is all, the harps is such a blue collar advantage. I think it's very interesting how harp can cover all of that. And I try to make the harp a strong thing. But you notice when I talked about approaching, instead of just approaching a piece sitting at the piano or not at the piano, because I know a lot of people, and I have I think of things away from the keyboard. Certainly, but just in terms of quick organization, I'm talking about shorthand, good and Monday, okay, mantra. The idea is to get it done, and to get it done is to isolate the challenge. So I do that with treble and bass. This is very much like George Goldner, who invented the word. I don't know if he invented the word rock and roll, but he certainly invented the concept race records and Tito Puente and a lot of early stuff, and the guy who taught the trade to Ahmet and whatever, Jerry Wexler, and there was George Goldner was the guy. And when I first met him with Mo Austin, they had a Warner Brothers at the time. I asked him, "What's the first clue, Mr. Goldner?" And he said, this is Richard Perry's father-in-law. He said, "Stretch the end." He said, "No, never spend your own money." That was the first clue. I said, "What's the second clue?" He said, "Stretch the ends." That is, nobody's really listening to this middle information on a speaker on a drive time for a car, thinking about drive time, rush hour, and selling tonnage, records by the ton. Small speaker, stretch the ends. I got that was the second clue from this guy who invented pop music for me. Highs, lows. I should have known that when I first heard Spike Jones or Les Paul, but that's something to think about. So I do that when I'm arranging. I think about what's going to sound to the casual observer, high. That's why I use woodwinds, because they really bring precision and definition into those ideas that might be in the strings. You just want to reinforce them maybe. So interestingly enough, after all the time I've spent with George Gershwin, I find my favorite Gershwin is his 2 piano rolls. Because pianistically, it just proved him as a pianist composer, but also it just perfected the decorative. I mean, there's a whole parade, the whole fucking parade.
Those he actually performed himself, right?
Oh yeah.
And then he played on pianos.
They
right?
got him. They got him in sync with his, I think, a Velta Forsetza, piano roll, Aeolian. I'm not sure. Interesting that George Gershwin, my favorite Gershwin.
Speaking of George Gershwin,
My favorite Gershwin
Might be
is
him here.
working for Amway. Would you, if you're not connected,
Don't mind it up. Hello. Okay.
yes, thank you very much.
It says royalties on it. That could be good.
This one must be at least $40. So
Did
yeah,
you say Gershwin is your favorite of all? Is that what you said?
no, I said my favorite Gershwin
Okay.
is his performance. I've heard other things. I've heard Gershwin's pieces orchestrated by others. I've heard, since Whiteman and Rhapsody in Blue, and the clarinet evolved from the Albert system of fingering, allowing that gliss. That's so beautiful. It's such a signature for the blues in the Gershwin thing. I love a lot of Gershwin, all blown up. I blew up the Gershwin Lullaby. The first one was in Orange Great Art, where they found the quartet had been consigned to the ignominy of a vault in Warner Brothers Music in Brooklyn or Bronx or somewhere. They got it out of there, and they found it in a cardboard. It was rejected from a musical the Gershwins had done. So that's when I blew it up to orchestra. That was unnecessary, but I wanted to prove that I found it first. I had the first transcription of the work. I found I was Johnny on the spot. Brian Wilson couldn't have cared less, nor his wife. So
Speaking of Gershwin, like him, you're really good at writing orchestral things, but a great songwriter too. I mean, Gershwin could write a song as well. And not every composer who can do a Gershwin can write a song.
I certainly don't put myself in Gershwin's league, either
I'll do that
either
for you.
pharmacologically or in terms of abundant given talent. But I still believe that I was underagented, and Gershwin was not.
Underagented?
Yeah, I think is the word. That, but I don't put myself in that league. And there is no, I have no shame in saying that I think, they say in the Episcopal Church, converts are the best kind. You look at the works of the Russian and German immigrants, the Judaic component in pop music, and you just find they came here to observe and the way Dvorak did in his American quartet and so forth, and his use of American vernacular and so forth. It's almost like these are the classics to me. There's nobody that lives in that world, that rare atmosphere. That's an open and closed case. I don't see it coming again, and I mean I haven't heard too much dubstepping me into to the definition of parallel understanding and a cohesion of an American point of view in the musical works of Gershwin and Berlin and Rodgers and Hammerstein, the golden age of songwriting.
Well, I make the comparison because it's very unusual, as you know, among most songwriters, to be an arranger, to be someone who can write arrangements and do what you do. There's you and there's Randy, who can write soundtracks and are great film scores. But as you know, most songwriters don't do that. That's not their skill set.
But my real interest is in the presentation of a piece of music, and I don't care where it came from. I mean, really, I've done I have just trashed a lot of great American music and music in general. I remember really wanting to make a case with Amazing Grace, and I did that in 5/4. So it's not something people want to dance to unless they got past Brubeck. I mean, maybe or Zappa, But I didn't think it was too dangerous, but just enough to bring a comedic component into reimagining what is really a sacred piece of shared information in racial entente, the way of getting, forgive me for being enslaving some, I can't imagine anybody in my family, in our family history, ever wanting to own somebody, but it was something that I felt needed to be said at that time. Interesting that Ray Charles wanted to have my string reel before he died, about a month before he died. They wanted me to send it to Paris. I said, what is a string reel? Well, it's the stuff you've done for strings. So I was just blown away. I mean, I was weeping. I was so grateful. And I don't know what his reaction to it was because he died within the month. But the fact that his agent called my film score agent, his manager called my film.
That would have been an exciting...
I was so thrilled because what it represented was this guy who's old enough and accomplished enough to really be pissed off at everybody and not that interested, took the time to be nice. And what he realized, I think, was something that I always enjoy remembering, and that is that my real interest is in music and doing what nobody else wants to do, just going and doing it. Louise allowed me to think about the work, and she trusted me. She knew that I would work I told her it would matter to me to do a good job, because it's going to be around. I've learned that much. It doesn't go away.
Yeah. Quite an arrangement. Some people just write long string pads, suspended chords for everything. That's their string.
Well, you can do it. One time, Randy Newman told me, he said, nobody's doing Debussy anymore. That's true, because I put what I do is I try to put all of the anecdotes, as many as I feel are necessary, to the strings. So I basically come up with 7 lines of it. It's called chamber music. And this is just where I ended up.
You're listening to The Great Song Adventure
With Louise Goffin
and Paul Zollo.
And we're listening to our first interview from our first episode with Van Dyke Parks.
And it's wonderful because what we've got for you is a behind-the-scenes conversation with Van Dyke, and it's so exciting to be able to share with you this amazing arrangement that he did.
And I'm so glad he talked about it. Your song Chinatown, which is coming out on your next album.
Yes, it's called All These Hellos, and that'll be coming out from the time of this episode into the fall, yeah.
So I think it's time to hear this song now. This is Chinatown, Louise Goffin with Rufus Wainwright.
Will you meet me down the street from here? Shadows sway, the moon appears. Chinatown will go down. Come around to Chinatown. You can be my good luck charm.
Every day's the new year.
Chinatown will go down. Come around to Chinatown. The buildings glow, the future laughs. We'll make our wish.
In Chinatown. The lanterns swing.
The dragon's king.
When we're dancing in Chinatown.
In Chinatown. Chinatown will go down. Come around to Chinatown.
Yeah, that was Chinatown by Louise Goffin, a duet with Rufus Wainwright, and a beautiful orchestral arrangement by Van Dyke Parks.
I still get goosebumps when I hear that.
I do too.
Thanks. It's it's really like going on a journey. It really fits with this podcast, actually, The Great Song Adventure. That was one of the greatest song adventures I think I've had. Meanwhile, we have more from Van Dyke Parks when we went to visit him at his home. Let's listen to part 2 of our conversation with Van Dyke Parks.
And I noticed one time I was in Berlin, I was at the Comic Opera to see Kurt Weill. And the September Song guy and all of this stuff, and Three Penny Opera, this, that, and the other, and all that nasty sex, which I could never understand. I never understood why people wanted to get nasty with sex, but anyway, some people do. But there's some beautiful songs, and so I went one night to the opera in Berlin, and Kurt Weill arranged exactly the way that what I found out. 3 violin lines, 2 violas, 1 cello, 1 bass. That's what I did with Louise. That's what I've learned to do with my talent. It takes a lot more talent to do a string quartet or God forbid, a trio. It takes more talent. The fewer the cards you have, you know, the more critical the structural engineering.
How did you feel when you heard that?
Well, I was so happily surprised. It was better than I expected. I mean, not that I wasn't expecting. It was just more. It was more taken to the nth degree than I could have hoped for, and it was just so classic. It was so timeless. That was my joy about it.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like something for today. It sounded like something that could have been before and could be in the future. It just has this timeless longevity to it that I love, and super fun.
Yeah, but you know, you already put that there, that thing there, which was obviously not of the present tense, you know, but still something we could understand with, I think, defiantly romantic and beautiful, you know.
Speaking of that, not about the present tense. I mean, people that know your music, it's always evoked that. It's evoked times before, and even now, I was doing my research, learning more about you than I even knew over 30 years. But I read at some point you gained this great love of old American music. Was it a sudden thing, or what led you there, and how old were you when that happened?
Well, when I was a kid, and I just really don't remember where it was, but I probably heard one of his pieces of music, and that was Gottschalk. And I heard the music of Gottschalk. The point is, all through my life, I have been tremendously impressed with piano composers who preserve music, folk music around them, but preserve not. The first one was Percy Grainger. Percy Grainger wrote Danny Boy. Danny Boy was expurgated. It was a piece of stuff stolen from the guy, although Percy Grainger was a gay Australian. He heard the piece and he glorified it by putting in piano. He transcribed for piano Londonderry Air. And that is not anatomical. Londonderry Air. Londonderry Air. Londonderry Air is with Danny Boy. Well, he just had put it on for piano music, and all of a sudden it hit the easels on pianos, which were now coming into fashion, the middle class, to state their refinement. Got a piano. It was called a matrimony gift, and this was one such gift, this piano. So that would put that in the parlor, and you're quality people. So that's what they did, and that was before and during World War I. That became the fashion. Matrimony gifts. And at the same time, there were a bunch of guys going to war. They're called doughboys, and they learned this piece, as did their allies, the Brits. Danny Boy became an immense hit, and it made Percy Grainger a multimillionaire when it mattered, with publishers charging 10 cents for a piece of music. 5 cents of it would go to the creator or creators. The other 5 cents would go to the publisher who must absorb the expense.
That was how the music business was. All the profits were from sheet music.
Yeah,
sales,
and so
right?
that's
Everyone
when.
buys
Yeah,
sheet
so
music.
Percy Grainger became so da dee dum. So I hear Percy Grainger. If you Google Percy Grainger, look at those orchestrations. You just go nuts. Okay. That'll really twist your knickers. What that guy did, and it's great, and not nostalgia, but physical music, folk music. Like that, Gottschalk's doing folk music. In 1850, by 1824, he was born, and so the 1850s, the guy's all over the place with his folk music. Well, I happened because I studied piano every day, all day, every day, when I stopped playing the clarinet, and I got into this Gottschalk music. Well, they wouldn't take him when I was studying at Carnegie Tech. I went to school So they didn't do it. So by the time I got out here, I was really so glad to see the light of day and get away from serious music.
Can I just ask you
Yeah.
if you sound so passionate about orchestration and arrangements, but you
Yeah.
did come up a lot as a songwriter and making records and with lyrics. So how do you feel about switching over to where you're not concerned so much with the writing of the words?
I don't have the continuum of a song. I think of songs all the time, by the way, of maybe making another song. The fact is, I've heard the results. I don't sing what it is that I'm thinking. I can't sing. So, so I don't pursue it because I don't have an instrument for it. The instrument for me would be various people singing what it is
You
that
need
I
an
think.
artist to sing.
I think that there's.
We love your albums, though. We love your singing. You've done so many for your style that's it's just perfect. When you sing.
Well, the point is that there's.
Your fans are going, "Oh, come on, you don't sing." We love your singing. I listened to Jump just the other day.
I want to tell you something. Somebody sent me the lyrics I wrote to a thing called Trade War the other day. A man who does futures, agricultural futures or something in New York, a very successful trader. And I think they have a Rodin in the living room, and he said, he wrote down the lyrics that I'd done to a piece called Trade War, which was, of course, a parody of somebody asking for a trade war. This is why we want a trade war. And I did it when I did the Japanese record, the
Tokyo Rose.
And that I remember the general manager of the label coming down, "You can't do this, we've got Warner Japan to deal with. Our sister corporation. You can't put this out." I said, "I'm sorry, the record doesn't go out without it. Because it's a parody." Anyway, so somebody sent it to me. The fact is, it was a good song. And I looked at the lyrics, they're well-crafted lyrics. And it was pertained Japan's progress of profit, becoming the economic whiz kid of the 80s and so forth. And quite frankly, look at him. The man outside is showing his dog, the squirrel. Is that cute?
That is nice.
He's showing
He's
his
holding
dog.
his dog.
the poodle up to the tree.
So we live on a nice
Nice.
boulevard, folks. That's what's happening.
But this idea that are you saying you come up with songs and you're not writing them down and completing the songs because you don't want to sing them?
Yeah, but I'm satisfied. I'm writing a song right now. I'm very happy with it, and I hope that I get it done in time to give it exposure, inclusion on the record I'm working on now. So I hope so. I hope it gets
your
on.
own record?
No, the one I'm doing with Gabby Moreno. We're
Gabby
doing
Moreno.
it together. And I hope it gets done in time. I have to have it done. So.
So I'll admit, when I say I love your singing, still one of my favorite albums of all is Orange Crate Art with that guy Brian Wilson, I believe, did the vocals. He did a good job. That's such a beautiful album.
Yes, it was a great album.
Masterpiece.
It should have been. Had it been performed, it would have recovered its costs. It's still, maybe $50,000 away from recovering its enormous costs, which accrued to a lot of stretch limousines that were sent away on weekend rates.
Well, when you write a song for yourself to sing, were you writing it differently than when you would write those songs for Brian or
Well,
other
I didn't
songs?
use the word scissors, and I didn't say dad. I avoided certain words that I thought that would be inflammatory. And I tried to make an album that I felt that he could take an adoptive proprietary interest in. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult to do, to infer what might be a projectable, because the thing was, Danny Hutton one time told me, the guy who founded Three Dog Night, Danny told me once that when he does a vocal, he creates a character that never existed. That's the way he looks at it. And I like that. Now, Randy Newman does it, but Randy still does Fats. When he's doing his vocal, he still does the Fats. I don't know if it's Domino or Waller. I think closer to Domino. But Danny can do many voices because he's a great vocalist. But they do the same thing, which is to try to create a character, a personality that didn't exist. I like that, an attitude maybe, to find something that you're allowed to do that. Am I allowed to achieve persona in this song? Am I allowed to do something with this song? Really go somewhere, try to get out of my skin. And good vocalists can do that, and that becomes something that I like to see in a vocal performance. Sometimes you look into an actor who will be in a whole bunch of different things. It's done so many things. It doesn't quite, in spite of a great leap of faith, doesn't achieve plausibility in what he's doing. Now, for example, as many times as I've seen Robin Williams in tears, with an audience to boot, I just don't get it, because I'm still thinking about that other lappy, that joke that he told me in the men's room that had to do with some sexual deviation and making love with an animal. I don't know what it was that he did. I never see Robin as a serious actor, because I'm thinking about running down with Sally, an airport corridor, with Robin Williams shouting, "Louis Farrakhan, white courtesy phone call. Louis Farrakhan, white courtesy."
Well, you worked on Popeye with him. So
I haven't worked a day in my life, and you know that. That's why you're here.
I heard that arrangement that you did for Popeye. You sent me some of that. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Oh, it was, yeah.
That was a good match, your music with that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I love about songwriting, and that's what compels me to write songs, is the creation of something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
When you're feeling the passion of why it's a good idea to be a songwriter, because there are things that don't exist that we need. We need to be soothed, we need to be inspired, we need to let out energy, and songwriting is that place where you can invent something that doesn't exist.
Well, you do it, and you communicate it in your work, and that's feel like putting some confetti on your parade here.
Well, when I first called you, I said, let's write a song, and you said, oh, that will take miles and miles and miles of time. You didn't want
Miles
to
of
write.
time. That could be a song title, Miles of Time.
Well, I do take a long time to do it. It used to be, and I really like the idea of extemporaneous results, but it's not that I feel that I can't come up. I can ad-lib a belch after a radish dinner, but I can do that. Spasms of enthusiasm, but then it's just writing it down. It's not what occurs to me in the shower. It's getting out of the shower, getting dry, don't fall down. Get on the mat carefully, and then towel off completely, and then turn on the computer quick, because that's the thing that will remember. Memory. It's all it is memory. So that's why songwriting takes me longer. But that's why I think we urge people to you have to get on it if you're writing. People don't realize how athletic it really is to get that thing written down.
Yeah, I read in one interview you said, people think writing songs is easy, because when you hear one that's perfect, it seems that that's perfect. How hard could that have been?
Yeah.
But to get to that place.
Yeah, no, it's hard work, and it's like that's the string reel thing. I've found usefulness in arranging that is not so theoretical as the other stuff that I have to say, wait a minute, maybe I'm no good. The hell with that. What I want to do is I want to feel sufficient, and like I've strengthened somebody, given somebody some mutual empowerment, done something that I know that's there, and that's good. That's why arranging is, to me, the thrill. Now, they don't call it creative. No, arrangers aren't getting any residuals for, And neither, I notice, in movies do composers get them in theaters. You have to go to Europe to get residuals in theaters per play. But you can't think about this. What does this matter? What matters is just to know that somehow or another we got through this, and we did something that make life more beautiful.
So for you, is arranging and the other kinds of non-songwriting musical activity as nourishing and fun for you as writing a song? Or is it different?
Well, I'm so happy because we all work alone. It seems to me with the improvement, the rapidity, the torque of internet and the digital age and digitalized communications, it's all seems to me the torque of industry to compensate for the withdrawal of the individual. And I think we all work a lot alone. And to me, the great satisfaction for me, just whew, proof positive, is when you run into a room of people, whether you're playing piano, guitar, bass, drums, or seeing a whole bunch of people saw away with the same immovable dough in the middle, you know, the resolution, the harmonious resolve of a universal quest for peace and tranquility and ineffable beauty, something that is beyond the street below, but it has come from, perhaps, from the street below. Yeah, to me that is like, that's the payoff for all of this stuff. It's that, so how to get to the place where we are, it's like, sometimes, often I wish, if you just forget the medical disadvantages, that I lived in Elizabethan times on a pub crawl with a madrigal and people just springing into something that's learned, that's new, that's learned, and everybody has a place in the room musically. I mean, to me, it's like, whoa, man, I should get that lucky that I could play a ukulele that well, or do something, or just sing, or learn the part, remember the part. So to me, arranging gets me there. This is why I'm here in this place with you and Louise.
And you're a great accordion player, by the way.
As long as you got the handcuffs, I got the squeeze box.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I also was reading that, you know, you never really seemed to love the music of the day the way other people were part of it. I heard that even when the Beatles came, when you just sensed them coming, you were not comfortable with that. And
well,
you always kind of seemed to be working cross-currently to the...
I was living under a billboard at that time at 7222 and a half Melrose, and above me was a billboard, and it said, "The Beatles are coming." And I knew that wasn't the way you spell the Beatles. And the man who thought that up was Derek Taylor. And Derek Taylor was their publicist. And he was simply using an ad campaign of R.J. Reynolds, who said the camels are coming. Camels are coming. That was a cigarette. And that's what the Doughboys brought back with them, with the song Danny Boy, lest we forget. So I only was thinking about... I was thinking about Paul Revere, and I was also thinking about the year before, was 1963, the endless summer with Bruce Brown surfing. That's when boards went to their called
polystyrene, something like that.
Yeah, polystyrene. Anyway, that was the year everything changed. Was 63. That was the year that Bob Dylan sang, but it was also the year that the British pronounced their real big global retort on, you know, using the blues, the 12 by 5, the Rolling Stones. So that's when American idioms proved to be a global no man's land of the proprietary, and the Beatles were, as far as I'm concerned, were reiterating what, you know, it's while we slept, basically. I was annoyed by the Beatles, their ubiquity and exquisite music.
Exquisite.
Yeah.
So we're
really
using
always
folk music in some ways electrically. I mean, you like use of folk music in new music, right?
Oh, what great music they did too.
You did like the music. You just weren't happy with the way they were.
No, but I mean, I knew it was. Yeah, I knew that it would be. I knew it was terrific. I wasn't distracted by it. I mean, I attempted not to be distracted by it by doing other work, which was California. Derived, you know, write what you know, grow up, bloom where you're planted. I was here. And so, of course, you know, I could have been just as studious about the information coming from the boy with the snake whose name was Alice. I mean, all of these greater David Bowie on the moon with Arena Rock and the expansiveness of Arena Rock and its ubiquity and largesse. No, what was interesting to me always were the intimate moments of discovery in music. And that was, I was maybe a flywheel on the engine of music at the time in the 60s, what they call the 60s and 70s. But the fact is, I think it was a proper role for me to take, and I think it was proper for me always to be available to do what I could to lend my name to projects that I wanted to enjoy a long shelf value. So
I read at one point that you felt, except for Pet Sounds, there wasn't a lot of good music coming out of that era. Was that your feeling?
well, I think a lot of the mixes could be better, but when they got 8 tracks, you know, and then all of a sudden 16 tracks and there were no flying faders, music got to be very ooh-wee-ooh, you know,
Yeah.
inadvertently obscure.
Yeah.
I was intentionally obscure.
Yeah, on Song Cycle, it was very obscure.
Very got tried to be
But beautifully so.
Somebody called
amazing.
there was a word for it, obfuscatore. I thought that was a very interesting. There, if you're going to squirrel a 4-syllable word, I don't know,
I think it was
5 syllables. Yeah, man.
What led you to do that? What that style of lyrics? Because you didn't keep doing that for very long.
Well, you mean lyrically? Why did I pursue it?
The Song Cycle lyrics were quite obscure.
But I was more interested.
albums after that were not.
I was more interested in free relating poetic license than in communicating the lyrical worth of, I think, what you'd say a necessarily transitive thought. I came to this place more interested in E. E. Cummings or Henry Miller or even the work of Irish playwrights than
James Joyce?
yeah, than I was about than I was in pretending to know what a song should do. And I didn't know what a song should do. And all I knew was I was there to learn something, to learn the studio, to learn what it could do. And that was an energetic process from 64 to 60. 64 was the first year I got to be in a studio with a 3-track tape, and on take 1 needed to sound sufficient.
Well, I remember that at the time hearing those kind of lyrics was very exciting. It was opening our mind in a way. And
Well,
famously, I don't know if it's true, but you wrote lyrics like that for Heroes and Villains and some of Brian's songs, and some people were kind of challenged by that. Is that right?
Well, that's good. That's good.
Challenge is
That's good.
one way of putting it.
And because to me it's a sleepwalk, and anything and life is like that, and people are complacent, and they're self-indulgent in their engagement with the arts. It's all pretty softball. I don't think there was anything overly demanding about what I was doing in general. And it's clear, if you look at the trajectory of my own emanations, my own albums and so on, that I was more interested in serving than being recognized. And I think that's fair to say.
That's an amazing thing.
But I mean, it's important, to me, there's always been the mantras, isn't it astonishing what can be accomplished if you just don't care who gets the credit? And if I look at this thing, I feel very lucky. But to come up with to have that moment with Louise, it's just like, you can't make this stuff up. And she wouldn't have. Neither one of us would have designed it. It was just an opportunity, and we both felt we could take it. I'm very grateful. I told Louise, quite frankly, look,
There's lovers kissing
yeah,
here.
yeah.
There's courting going on.
No, it's wonderful on Great Street.
It's very romantic.
So I told, I feel I'm on a French postcard that's rated G.
Lovely.
Yeah. So and I told Louise that this mattered to me. That's all, and I'm proud that we did it. And all I can say is I don't know how it's going to average with Spotify. But it's such a rare thing to be able to have people come together to play. It's dangerous stuff. I love it. It makes it's exciting to me. It's like working without a net. You don't know. And you know that you don't know. And that's okay not to know. But I mean, really, to me, there's nothing better in human affairs than to be in a situation that stimulating and challenging, curious and inconvenient, too. Because then what do we do now, So I think we should do this more often.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
What led you from doing those kind of lyrics to Song Cycle to when you started doing albums like Jump, where it was very thematic and very clear exactly, telling stories? It was a whole different style of lyrics, and in some ways maybe harder to do. How was that for you?
Well, I had a co-lyricist on Jump, which actually, and on some of it, he was handy on in the middle of a second verse. But he came up with a great title. It was called Invitation to Sin. And Invitation to Sin was an impossible song to sing, and I loved it that she did. It was the Madam in a Whorehouse. And she was singing to Brer Rabbit and stretch yourself out, let me tell you what it's all about. Doubtless you want to know. I've been a queen and I've seen high society. Climbed the stairs so many times with millionaires just to help them chase their blues away. These are the does I suppose you all know how to play. An invitation to sin and begin to be gay. She goes up to the top of the whole tone, and right on, she's hanging up there. And then I make her do two octaves.
Who's your collaborator who wrote that?
On the title, he gave me the title, An Invitation to Sin. And whoa, man, wait a minute. Wait, that's great. It's what you learn in the morality tales as a guy's learning about hookers. Don't fall in love with the dealer, Van Dyke, okay? So this is it. Now they tell me. But it's in the stories. It's in these folk tales. Brer Rabbit gets in trouble. And so that's boom, boom, boom. And I'm just thinking, that the idea is you try to, I think about how things might cohere in the song itself, yeah. And,
So did you say you collaborated with them? There was someone else writing those songs with you on Jump?
on some of the songs, yes, there's a lyricist who accompanied me.
Who is that?
Martin Fyodor Kibbe, Kibbe.
How come you just worked with the lyricist? You're pretty good at that yourself.
Well, I've known Martin for a long time, and it's like, to me, it was circumstantial more than anything. I came back from North Carolina. I was all ready to I was going to put the record out, and I didn't think I had enough songs. I was living out at Santa Monica, and he was close.
Sometimes
And
those are the things that
he
stick.
he was
Yeah.
close, and I had a piano, and not this one. I was we stayed at Lorraine Newman's house for about 6 months while she starred in a Broadway play. That was out there on the west side.
There's something that you said earlier that I just want to go back to. I loved what you said about when music turned from, instead of having 8 tracks or 4 tracks, to 16, and then you had all these options, because I think that's a crucial thing. Because right now what happens in music is option anxiety, really. I mean, even in what to listen to that's already made. But I think the key to mature artistry is the act of making decisions and making, commitment, committing, this is how it goes, throw out that chord, no, that doesn't work, I love that. And that relationship with any sort of work, whether you're arranging or writing a song, to me is crucial. And I loved the idea of, when the Beatles were making records and they had to mix things down, they had to commit that. They had to say, okay, these 4 tracks are going to be stereo.
Oh yes, indeed. I believe that's an advantage to being compelled to make a decision. And I noticed that I first learned how the exponential increase of those decisions really became apparent to me when I watched Brian during the Pet Sounds sessions that I attended, and then beyond that. And because you can't bounce this track, that's an adjacent track. You can't bounce the adjacent track. So if you're on 4 tracks and you want an adjacent, you got to go. You got to go, figure out where you're going to record here, and then do your non-adjacencies, and go 4 to 4 and all this stuff, and you can find yourself, and wait, I better put the echo on these whatever, on the marimba before I combine it with the suspended cymbal and whatever. you know, that you're locked in.
Yeah.
You're locked in, so you're developing that sense of commitment as you go along, and you don't go back and second guess. You can't go back. The only way forward is tout droit, straight ahead, you know, and that's something that you can keep on. Yeah, you can keep on second guessing yourself throughout this. All these incredible options that I see. It's like being at the supermarket in front of which cane sugar do I really want my child to be eating with just to get some wheat. You know, it's like it's 100 boxes. They all have cane sugar, but you know that it's a beautiful display. It would be nice just to have the article and move on.
And you're still on digital performance, so obviously you found something that works and you like it, and you don't need to keep updating.
Well,
the
yeah,
system.
and also, I must say, but I was one of 4 guys who had a Moog synthesizer. One time in my life, I was a go-to guy with synthesizer, and I did some AT&T and some national commercials, and it was amazing. And did the first Nissan, company ads and so forth. So anyway, just to prove that I was commercial, I thought I better prove I'm commercial.
I didn't know that.
I did some commercials. I'm telling you the truth. I soon understood that there was this incredible urge to move forward technologically, and people were going to be owning truck companies, and or this SIR came into being at that time. Who wants a marimba? Well, we have a marimba,
Yeah.
So
To move instruments around.
Yeah. So I hired them. Because I love tuneful percussion, I got a lot of stuff from them.
Well, you're considering that a real old-fashioned, old-school synthesizer, but some people, I don't think even know Van Dyke would use a synthesizer.
Sally,
Well, we're wrapping up here.
Yeah, we're
You
wrapping
don't
it.
need to.
we're wrapping
Take
it
more of your
down,
time.
Louise. We've seen so many beautiful scenes of lovers walking by,
There's a lot going on out
embracing,
there.
and this, that, and
Isn't
that.
it
Fun to watch the world go by.
Yeah, we saw a courting happen.
Jubal, are you
Very
being
romantic.
noisy? Are you panting?
Yeah, so the thing is, what is amazing to me is this, there's a credibility gap, I must say, that I must admit to. It's a credibility gap of the pop artist. Okay, let's call ourselves for a second. What has happened to pop culture? From that time in like '63, when I first came and studied it with that can from Andy Warhol, the Redux of Liechtenstein, and all the in the arts, you found this cartoon consciousness and the use of cliche for a shuffle mentality. Icons became important, and the blues became the lingua franca. What has happened to this language that has produced such a credibility gap? Where has pop culture failed? And that's what I want to know. And that is something that I think every creative person who's doing that, coming up with another song, wants to cross that credibility gap and find believability in what is being said and done. And that takes the knowledge of right and wrong. It takes doing the right thing, and in thought and in music, and to me, it's an Everest of the human spirit, and this is where we're going. And I want to somehow redeem plausibility and get believability in everything we do, and that's, I think, and we're united there. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And people have to be self-editing. I mean, there was another song that we did,
Yeah.
and that was the first time in my life I was joking with Paul. I said, I really felt so embarrassed that I have Van Dyke arranging a song, and we're at the session, we're at the string date, and I still don't have the lyrics written to the song. And you kept calling me up saying, Louise, it would really help me out if you had some lyrics for me. And I said, I'm with you, Van Dyke. I wish I had them too.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, when I sit down, I still haven't written the lines that I believe. I don't believe myself yet.
Yeah.
So I kept working it, and eventually I got there.
Well, I forgive me. Okay? I forgive me. As I look back, I forgive me. And I think that's where you should be, damn. That's what I recommend. I think that those two windows were a really terrific way for us to meet. They were, and that was really dangerous. The other one was called
Oh my God.
Oh my God! The reason that a computer glitch moved a meter change, a bar, 1 bar. So like the downbeat was off, but the musicians were, they didn't give a damn. They had pension and welfare. Not much to speak of, by the way. The union's meeting next week in New York, very big, about the taking down our pensions, 40%. Oh, dear heart. I am as downsized as I'm going to get, damn it. This is not good.
I've got to say, I've met many musicians in this town who have been lucky to be hired by you for sessions. And they love working with you. Working with you is a joy.
Well, they all know that nobody sleeps. Nobody sleeps.
The first time I interviewed you, I was listening to your albums on LP. I remember getting Jump. It was just a joy. I lived in that album, and it was the total experience. And now, obviously the way people take in music has changed a lot. They're listening to it on their phones, but it seems songs still matter. Do you find that the songs still matter? Do you think they'll continue to matter in the way that they always have to us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody dares act prophetic about what songs will do, seeing what they have done. Look at the Hatikva, the Marseillaise, We Shall Overcome. Hell, Yes We Can. And I mean, to me, the people want those songs, the anthems. Yeah, they want them. People like that. People like to gather around a song. That's a fact. I see that.
Mm-hmm. But not only anthems, songs for the mundane parts of your life, for all parts of human activity.
Yeah, and I'm just, I just played some squeeze box for Dave Alvin. He did a Steve Young song called Silver Lake. Well, Steve was my best friend. So many people have been my best friend, and I want to continue that.
But you were talking about Gershwin and how popular culture has changed. What do you think about the popular song, the evolution? A lot of people from previous generations think as soon as rock and roll came in, it got terrible compared to what it was. Well, how do you view that?
Well, I think that there was an unexplained propitiation. I think there was a definite a fumble when people really tendency to idolize the blues. They got their venting. The blues deserved that, and I think that is part of the browning of America. This is something I believe in thoroughly. I don't believe that we need to hold on to Norman Rockwell too fiercely. I think it's time to move on in so many ways of integrating and bringing harmony to this multiculturalism of the United States. So to me, that will help refresh music. Right now, I'm doing that. I'm doing that to the best of my ability. Pronounced, the MO is multiculturalism.
You've done that for decades.
I've done that for decades because I'm very happy about it. The whole thing, I mean, to me, it's like, it's the carpetbagger's delight. It's what to do. It's how to get involved. I could do a tango or whatever, It's this is good to do.
Remember in the 80s, they said, here's world music. But you did Discover America with Caribbean music and African music in 1971. Right?
Well, but it's, to me, it's funny to me. It's filled with contradiction too. Discover America was, just imitative of Caribbean idioms, and why I drew the line. I felt singing the blues was racial. It was rape and run. It was something I didn't want to do. And as I looked at it, I knew Mississippi John Hurt. I knew Lightning Hopkins. I worked with Long Gone Miles. Every night had to follow him in 1963 at a coffee house, Long Gone Miles, with Willie Chambers on guitar. I had to follow them. I had to follow Bessie Griffin and the Gospel Pearls every night. You know, it's like this to follow that.
You were in the bands?
No, I followed them. Me and my brother was singing songs in a coffee house with
You
a
were
bass
doing
player.
for a
Oh,
while,
so you were
with a-
the next act.
Yeah, we had to follow them.
Got it.
And that was tough. Let me tell you something. So I always had this great respect and wanted the infusion of the blues. I wanted it in my life. It refreshed me. My favorite blues singer was Howlin' Wolf and this, that, and the other, and a very pronounced interest in all of this. But it was something that I didn't want to adopt because they were not the recipients of the commercialization. You know, were not there when it got monetized by the Stones. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, black people couldn't get a job, couldn't get laid in a women's penitentiary with a fistful of pardons, couldn't get a job at the House of Blues. Couldn't get a job. Couldn't get the job. And I know that. Many repeatedly, I saw those people being unagented. And I just thought it was just regrettable. That's the way I feel about it. Mm-hmm. It's funny that I should contrast my piousness there with my ability, interest in just going and trying to get the banana boat and get on a hammock in the Bahamas. I was ready for that, But I think you'd have to judge everything by its own merits. Always have been surrounded with people of great need. At that time, all my friends, some of my friends were white, but most of my friends were black, and I was just happened to be the way that it worked out, where we were and where the free chicken was, That was basically how it worked out for my brother and me for a while there. And then so I got that West Indian thing, so that was an accident. Very little of my life has been planned. Kind of like this podcast.
Well, I think, we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you
She's
so
giving me
much.
strong hints. But I have one more question.
Okay.
I did want to ask before we leave, because one thing that's changed a lot since I've seen you last is our current administration that we have, our president. And in your previous album, you wrote a lot about what was going on with Black Gold and Wall Street. And it's kind of gotten worse than that. And I haven't seen a lot of songwriters being able to make sense out of this, what to do. Have you responded to what's going on now, in music? Has it brought you to a song?
Well, I liked my song, not because I liked the song. I don't like the song, but I liked the idea for the song called I'm History. And the reason I like it, it talks about Kennedy sitting down for dinner with all the Nobel laureate award winners. And they all said, all these people sat down for dinner at the White House. There, Jack with his wife, Jacqueline. And he said, this is the greatest collection of talent in the White House history, with the possible exception of when Jefferson dined alone. And I loved the observation. And I wrote a song about that, and got into all of the significance of the importance of the presidency and the way it personifies our demi-democracy. Mm-hmm. It's the power of the presidency. The personality of the presidency is all important. We have ended up with a man who should be fired. I mean, I know that, and for many reasons, my strongest objection to that square in the Oval Office is an ecological one. Ecology is my greatest concern for all that we address. Ecological consideration that has to do with migration. You don't invite more migrants than your land can sustain, and so forth. And think about things, and that should be a litmus. Ecology, how we treat our oceans, mm-hmm. how we treat our air, mm-hmm. how we treat our land.
Yeah.
And that includes an aesthetic, an actual aesthetic, taxable aesthetic fundamental. The land base of Waikiki, for example, was saved because in 1982, the reason was because it was beautiful. Robert Wenham was the man that did it, the Hawaii Land Use Act. Why was Waikiki saved from agricultural development? Because it was beautiful. Check it. So I think about these values, see. So he has violated the sacrosanct ecological programs, which I find absolutely essential to my well-being. That has to do with the great send nets that are being put out on the coast here in the migratory path of the infant gray whales. He's putting they're allowed now. That's going on now. So the ecology, war. He is a warmongering, he's an idiot. So he is raising the threshold of the doomsday clock, and he is hastening the hour of any possible cataclysm based on just the folly of an exercise of presidential prerogative with the nuclear, with the button. And now, the trade war, which is just to punctuate our disassociation from all of the globe. It's just a renunciation to all of these partners. What are we doing to Canada? Canada's our friend. Why are we doing this?
Mexico's our friend too, or they were.
Mexico is our friend and also is absolutely essential to us. So if your question to me is how I feel about, I feel terrible about the president and his policies, and I think and music and the arts have a lot to do as they remove their subsidies for the arts. We have to do so much more. I think I expressed it really adequately in the Daily Beast when I did the article on the Daily Beast. You look up Van Dyke and Daily Beast, you'll see what I'm talking about, how I feel that the arts are now more in peril than ever. And I think the arts are definitely being treated as a decoration and are as important as political and activist tool can be. We must change minds.
I agree. It's where we look to for hope and for sustenance.
And we're going to have to do it on every level of engagement like it. It can't just be from in one arena. It has to be, we have to cross that great divide. We have to find our way into the red meat states. It's the desire to confuse.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, Nixon was a liar, but he didn't constantly question truth itself.
So that's why we need clarity in our purpose and so forth. This is why it's good that you guys came over here today, because it proved that you're as good as your last five, whatever your last cue, they say in the agent's office. As good as your last cue. It was so nice of you to remember that I'd worked for you on your project. I really believe in it. I think it's great that it shows a lot of moxie, that you just keep on being the entrepreneur of your own efforts, because that's what they've done to us. And the reason I mentioned the Daily Beast article is because there are no patrons, and this whole thing is, believe me, self-endowed. We are by our Creator, self-endowed. Some of us have the equipment. You are equipped. I love you guys.
Fist bumping.
Come on, Dave. We love each other.
And we love you, Van Dyke Parks.
And you've been listening to the first episode ever of The Great Song Adventure with Louise Goffin
And Paul Zolo. Thank you for listening. We're going to have another great episode for you, and it's our interview with the Motels, who have a great new album out.
It's great getting to talk to both Marty and Martha Davis of the Motels. If you want to keep up with what we're doing, you can find us on Facebook at The Great Song Adventure, also on YouTube and Instagram. Yes, we're there too. So you can find us there.